Well, Facebook might have really tempted fate here with their continued insistence on these data sharing agreements after all the trouble they've been in with the FTC and with everything else that they've gone through. So the fact that there is a grand jury looking into this can only mean that there is potential criminal violations. That's the purpose of a grand jury. They're at the beginning, potentially beginning phases of that to determine if there is enough evidence to issue an indictment. So right now, that's all we know. There are some federal statutes that could relate to general fraud in obtaining information from users, and I think that would be my best guess as to what potential violations they're looking into at this point.
Katie, does the crux of this, though, focus on the 2011 consent order?
Well, the consent order with the FTC is a separate sort of case that is related. In that decree, Facebook agreed that they would not use users' data without getting explicit permission, and there are certain parameters that they had to agree to. If they violated that, the FTC can seek fines, injunctions, and other relief, and that they can go through the Department of Justice for that. But the grand jury probe into the criminal side is actually a totally separate case altogether. So that's what's very interesting. There's lots of different cases that are related. They do overlap, but they're not the same thing necessarily.
Well, also there's DOJ looking into the Cambridge Analytica scandal. I mean, you mentioned the FTC. This one's out of the Eastern District, this new one, looking into whether there was criminal wrongdoing, into data sharing. How do we separate the seriousness? How should investors look at the seriousness of the various investigations?
Well, with the FTC violations, Facebook can potentially face huge amounts of money in fines and other sorts of consequences for that. But a criminal prosecution of an entity or an individual is a totally different story altogether. So right now, with the criminal side of things, I think we're at a very early stage to say that there's going to be an indictment at all. The purpose of the grand jury is to determine if that is even something that's viable. This could be a creative prosecutor that's just covering their bases, looking into that. I think realistically that the FTC violations from the consent decree are more concerning for Facebook. Although Facebook has issued statements defending their actions, they've stated that they have abided by the terms of that agreement, and that has been their position. So perhaps they will prevail in that. They would be very foolish to have violated after being on notice for so long, but apparently that seems to be what the allegations are in many of these different probes.